Hello, and welcome back, or welcome for the first time, to a live reading. And this week we are reading Species with Amnesia, Our Forgotten History by Robert Sepehr. And welcome, Juice, welcome everyone. Anyone who listens now, listens later, joins us live. We're gonna work through this book together. If you watch the first one, yeah, lots of big words in here, man. They're kind of fun. Maybe I'm getting better at them. So I want to read the back of this real quick to you. It says, Species with Amnesia, Our Forgotten History, deals with events surrounding our sudden emergence of modern man, starting with the dawn of Cro-Magnon 35,000 years ago, leading up to our present time civilization. What are our true origins? If we don't remember our history, are we doomed to repeat our mistakes? Robert Sepehr is an author, producer, and anthropologist. He specializes in linguistics, archaeology, and paleontology. A harsh critic of the out of Africa theory, Sepehr, I think it's Sepehr, puts forth alternative diffusionist arguments, often involving advanced antediluvian civilizations, which means pre-flood, occult secret societies, ancient mythology, alchemy, and astrotheology. And I'm going to read the introduction again real quick, this paragraph. I love it. Highly advanced civilizations have been here before us. Let's try again. Highly advanced civilizations have been here before us, just to be destroyed by some great global catastrophe. But for each race that has died out, another has taken its place, with a selected few holding on to the memories and sacred knowledge of the past race. In our vanity, we think we have discovered some of the great truths of science and technology, but we are in fact only just beginning to rediscover the profound wisdom of past civilizations. In many ways, we are like an awakening species with amnesia, yearning to reclaim our forgotten past. Also, I'll just go through just a brief summary of the things that we covered in the first part, which is linked below. And also you can find Robert Sepehr's information on Amazon in the description as well. So we went through a bunch of the skulls and fossils that had been found, the Piltdown Man, which was then named a hoax, and the southwestern Colorado man. Things it was like ended up being from the tooth of an antique horse. Lots of these things. And then it goes into Lucy, the story of Lucy, the Australopithecus, and how it was mostly just artist renditions, and how the out of Africa theory hasn't been backed by scientific findings. And then it goes into talking about how the human race is an amalgamation of cross species interbreeding between the different distinctions of earlier man. And then it goes into talking about the way nature in general works. And it talked about a lot of different animals that have crossbred naturally in nature. And it then goes to talk about hieroglyphics and ancient cave paintings that have significant astrological meanings that haven't seemed to be as pointed out until more recent years with the more advanced scientific tests and studies that people are able to do. So we went through all of that and talked about the Cro-Magnon man and the differences between the structures of our anatomies. Then we started getting into the history of Greece and Egypt and Solon and Plato's narrative and how that links up with Atlantis, and also with the timing of the dating of these different fossils that they had found. And then it talked about the story that Solon brought back from Egypt and how Egypt and Greece were founded by the goddess Athena, and they shared their knowledge of where mankind came from and how there had been many disasters before, normally through the agencies of water and fire. And that's where we're at. I went for 2.5 hours, and dang, at the end, it was like, who's that actor that breaks up his words? Is he like on Star Trek or Star Son of a Gun? It's one of those. Anyways, I started reading all my sentences like he does. So, all right. The last little paragraph that I attempted to read during our last live. According to Plato, the Atlanteans inherited their godlike appearances from Poseidon, who fell in love with Cleito and built her a palace in Atlantis on a hill. They had 5 sets of twins, for which the eldest was called Atlas, and thus the name of not only the island/continent, but also a specific star in the Pleiades from which they claim to have descended from. Okay. The peopling of the Americas. The Clovis culture is a prehistoric Paleo-Indian culture that appears about 11,500 RCYBP, which means, thank you, radiocarbon years before present. Oh, so YBP means years before present. Cool. Radiocarbon years. Okay. So the Clovis culture is a prehistoric Paleo-Indian culture that appears 11,500 RCYBP at the end of the last glacial period ice age, characterized by the manufacture of Clovis points, which are spear tips, and distinctive bone and ivory tools. According to the Clovis first paradigm, which gained ascendancy in the mid-20th century, the first inhabitants of the Americas were people associated with the Clovis culture. Beginning somewhere around 12,000 BC, they theoretically crossed from Siberia to Alaska over the Beringia land bridge created by the lower sea levels during the Ice Age, and advanced southwards via an ice-free corridor east of the Rocky Mountains as the glaciers retreated. They then quickly spread to all parts of the Americas and supposedly populated all of South America. Parts of America and supposedly populated all of South America. Before the Second World War, mainstream anthropologists insisted that humans first entered America only 4,000 years ago, and anyone arguing otherwise was treated with hostility. Once the evidence for habitation by the Clovis culture as early as 12,000 BC became widely accepted, they then proceeded to treat any professionals claiming to have found evidence of an even earlier human precedence in the Americas with the same prejudice that they themselves had previously suffered. Nevertheless, the Clovis first paradigm became increasingly untenable as reliable evidence mounted of earlier human habitation. Many researchers doubt that Native Americans had a single cultural origin, as they spoke an incredible variety of languages, held a multitude of religious beliefs and customs, and practiced a host of different and often contrasting lifestyles. The resemblance of many modern Native Americans to the Mongoloid peoples of Asia was recognized long ago, and migrations from that region have likely taken place. However, only at specific times did Beringia form an ice-free land bridge, and was there an ice-free corridor into the heart of North America. This is one of the reasons why the possibility of coastal/maritime migration is also widely recognized. The fixation on migrations via the Bering Strait is scientifically unjustified. The earliest archaeological sites are not found in eastern Beringia, nor do sites get progressively younger as one travels south through the Americas. Using modern genetic analysis, scientists have discovered that Northern European people, including some British, Scandinavians, French, and some Eastern Europeans, descend from a mixture of two very different ancestral populations, and one of those groups is related to Native Americans. This research was published in the November 2012 issue of the Genetic Society of America's journal Genetics, according to Nick Patterson, first author of the report. There is a genetic link between the Paleolithic population of Europe and modern Native Americans. The evidence is that the population that crossed into the Americas more than 15,000 years ago was likely related to the ancient population of Europe. Cool. Boy, welcome, yay! Whoever the Clovis people were, they hunted large game and left behind distinct spear points that were found over much of North and Central America in the early 20th century. Nothing similar has been found in Eastern Asia, Siberia, or Beringia. Clovis points resemble spear points of the Cro-Magnon or the following southern Solutrean culture. Solutrean culture, which was dominant in present-day France and Spain from about 21,000 to 17,000 years ago. According to George Weber, author of Clovis People, it is significant that the oldest Clovis tools are being found in the eastern and southern regions of North America, rather than in the Northwest, where one would expect them if the Clovis people came from Siberia and Alaska. And then there's a diagram here, and it's a map. It says Clovis and Clovis-like points by county, points per 1,000 square million. Soul Train. All right. Dr. Douglas W. Oakley, the division head of physical anthropology for the National Museum of Natural History at the Smithsonian Institution, has recently described the 9,500-year-old Kennewick skull, as well as certain other Ice Age American skulls dated over 9,000 years old, as being long-headed and having a short face. Dr. Göran Brunholt, professor of archaeology at Gotland University in Sweden, comments, on ancient Caucasians in America, Kennewick Man has not been the only find. Others include the 13,000-year-old Peñon skull found in Mexico, the 12,500-year-old Monte Verde site in Chile, the 9,400-year-old Spirit Cave mummy in Churchill County, Nevada, and others. DNA distinguishing U.S. Indians from Mongoloids also strengthens the above evidence. Pre-Clovis and Clovis stone tools found in America are similar to those in northwestern Europe known as Solutrean. Such tools have never been found in Siberia. Stone tools found at Cactus Hill in Virginia, dated to 17,000 to 15,000 BP, seem to represent the transitional site between the Solutrean and Clovis cultures. Similar sites include Page Ladson in Florida, with animal bones and human artifacts reaching back to about 14,500 to 12,500 BP, and the Meadowcroft Rock Shelter in Southwest Pennsylvania. Hey, that's right near me. With evidence of occupancy dating to 9,000 to 6,000 BP. A growing number of archaeologists insist that people associated with the Solutrean culture must have migrated from Europe to North America around 20,000 to 15,000 BP, when their stone tool technology later influenced the development of the Clovis toolmaking culture of the Americas. Red paint people, the Maritime Archaic. Thousands of years before Columbus and Eric the Red, a tall, fair-skinned people lived in well-organized communities on the coasts of Brittany, Denmark, Labrador, and especially Maine. Biological traits in the skulls and skeletons of the Maritime Archaic, as they are called, indicate they are of the same racial makeup as the people of the Basque people of Europe. Although dating all the way back to 7000 BC, these people had developed a high degree of craftsmanship, expertly using fire-making tools of a sort superior to those of the later Indians. Their implements imply a high degree of skill in woodworking, and they made boats in which they seem to have traveled considerable distances. They are more famously referred to as the red paint people, due to their traditional use of red ochre paint onto their skin, where we get the term redskins. Of course, it's made derogatory for political reasons, which has nothing to do with ethnicity, since these natives from that time period were as white-skinned as the Basque of Spain. The red paint people also used red ochre heavily for rituals, sprinkling it all across their graves and the deceased relatives. This is a well-established burial custom that can be seen wherever Cro-Magnon types have settled, including the other side of the Atlantic. An example would be in Egypt, where the oldest remains belonging to a naturally mummified redhead 5,000 years ago, nicknamed Ginger, on display at the British Museum. Genevieve, welcome, welcome. Welcome all. Thanks for being here with me. Okay, so then we have this figure. This is the 5,500-year-old Egyptian remains on display at the British Museum, nicknamed Ginger, because of his red hair. Michael, yes, welcome. Awesome, man. Michael, can you drop your link? Because I think that I've been unsubscribed to you and I couldn't find you. I couldn't find you when I was looking for you. Thank you, if you could. All right. The same can still be seen on the ancient Egyptian walls and statues. The men symbolically painted red. Symbolism aside, red ochre is composed of iron oxide, which is the active ingredient in most brands of sunscreen, a must for any ultra fair-skinned people in regions that require protection from the sun. That'd be way healthier than using sunscreen. Poison! Poison! Since the time of the European settlements following the discovery, quote unquote, made by Columbus, multitudes of red ochre graves have been found. Early New Englanders regarded them with extreme suspicion. To find one was considered an evil omen. Hardy adventurers, however, unearthed the paint, put it to good advantage when they saw that it gave a satisfactory finish to their furniture and other woodwork. At first, the ochre deposits, always accompanied as they were by strange stone weapons, were not imagined to be associated with burials. In the late 19th century, Dr. Augustus C. Hamlin of Bangor interested archaeologists at Harvard University's Peabody Museum in investigating the main red paint cemeteries. Some of the best collections of red paint artifacts are at the Peabody Museum and at Phillips Andover Academy. The findings in about 30 red paint cemeteries have been recorded. Of course, many other cemeteries have been found of which there is no record, the relics having been dug out and lost or scattered. All the documented cemeteries in Maine are near water, navigatable for small boats. All but 2 are on stream banks or near the coast. The 2 exceptions, although on high ground, lie beside what may once have been the course of a stream now deflected in another direction. The red paint people retained many traits and skills of their ancestors who escaped from Atlantis. However, just like other descendants and survivors around the world, Their civilizations never reached the heights previously attained in their original homeland. Thank you. Thank you very much. Haplogroup X. What is mitochondrial DNA? Each mitochondrion, plural, is mitochondria, is a separate bacteria. Each of our cells, except blood cells, contains hundreds to many thousands of mitochondria. The mitochondria convert sugar in the form of a glucose molecule into energy. As such, the mitochondria are the basis of life, because without them, many of our cells simply would not function. Since they are a separate bacteria, they have their own DNA that differs from human DNA. The mitochondrial DNA ladder has only 16,569 steps. Therefore, it is much more conducive to use in research than it is human DNA. It is abbreviated as mtDNA. Since the DNA of a mitochondrion is not human, where does it come from when a new human is born? The answer is that the newborn child has taken some mitochondria from the mother, not the father. Now things get interesting. The DNA of the mitochondria mutate. They mutate at a well-understood and predictable rate. By analyzing the mtDNA of living humans and comparing it to other humans, scientists can determine the lineage of the maternal line, from mothers to daughters. They can then take ancient samples of mtDNA, say from a tooth or bone that is thousands of years old, and begin to study ancient migration patterns. In some cases, the analysis of mtDNA conflicts with the standing paradigms of archaeology. Very noticeably, this has occurred concerning the origin of American Indians. Oh, crap, I want to keep that behind my ear. All right. Where am I? American Indians. Since mtDNA mutates at a certain predictable rate, it's possible to judge when distinct populations originally diverged based on how different the mtDNA they have today is. If a group of people splits up, say some going east and some going west, mtDNA mutations found in the east but not in the west likely originated after the group diverged. Count up the mutations and the rate at which they would have occurred, and you can figure out an estimate for when the family tree branched off. You literally have a genetic clock, explained Douglas Wallace, a professor of molecular medicine at the University of California, Irvine. Scientists categorize mtDNA into a number of so-called haplogroups based on their similarities and differences. Professor Wallace simplifies things for us. You can think of them as like blood types. They don't affect the way you live, but can be identified at the molecular level. The conventional wisdom to explain the peopling of America is that migrants crossed from Northeast Asia to Alaska around 12,000 years ago to become the ancestors of today's Native Americans. But mtDNA analysis has revealed some unexpected links between Europe and North America. When scientists analyzed the mtDNA of a broad sample of living Native Americans, they found that about 97% had mtDNA from haplogroups A, B, C, or D. These haplogroups are all present in modern-day Siberia and Asia, so it makes sense that the forefathers of those Native Americans came from those regions. But the surprise was that about 3% of the Native Americans tested had mtDNA from a different haplogroup called X. Some populations, such as the I don't know how to say this, such as the Ojibwa, I'm sorry about that, from the Great Lakes region. Oh man, right? That's right where I am too. Dang. Have a high concentration of X, around 25%. Ooh. It has recently been admitted by some geneticists that the founders of Native America included those of Caucasoid ancestry, and that the precedence of haplogroup X in North America opens up the possibility of an early migration westward from Europe. So this is a map showing the distribution of haplogroup X on both sides of the Atlantic. Ooh, figure 33. Cool. Okay. Ojibwe. Thank you. Thank you. Oh my gosh. Thank you. Ojibwe. Ojibwe. Okay. Exactly how did haplogroup X get to North America? A small amount has been found near China's Tarim Basin, famous for its ancient Caucasian mummies. But it's definitely not common in modern Asians. It can, however, be found in a substantial percent of the present-day European population. By looking at the various mutations within haplogroup X, scientists were able to use that genetic clock to estimate when those earlier Europeans would have arrived. Depending on how large a group they assume headed west, they come up with two time ranges, either between 36,000 and 23,000 years ago, or between 17,000 and 12,000 years ago. Haplo X definitely did not arrive in America with the European explorers of the last 500 years, nor did it arrive with Eric the Red and the Vikings. European X and American X are different enough that scientists say they must have diverged tens of thousands of years ago, long before the age of exploration introduced European genes to the New World. The evidence that haplogroup X is not the result of Vikings or even more recent European admixture would be its presence in ancient Native Americans. Ancient DNA samples from the Norris Farm site, the Windover site, and the Amazon basin exhibit the characteristic genetic markers found in individuals assigned to haplogroup X. Interesting. I wonder where Cherokee falls on that line. I have Cherokee blood. The evidence from mitochondrial DNA passed on by mothers only is supplemented by evidence from Y chromosomes, which are passed on by fathers only. Native American Y chromosomes show a variety of haplogroups, including haplogroup 4 and 1C, which are also characteristic of certain populations of Jewish peoples. Haplogroup 1C is common enough in the New World, and it has been proposed as a major founder haplogroup for the New World. Awesome. In a 2001 study, haplogroup X was identified in ancient remains around 8,000 years old, found in several cemeteries in the traditional area occupied by the Basque in the Pyrenees Mountains of France and Spain. Also, the location of the Cro-Magnon cave painting. Once the rare and mysterious haplogroup X was shown to be in the Basque population as well as in North America, the scales of evidence tipped in a new direction. The mitochondrial DNA discoveries show that the Basque population is related to the North American Indian population. Since these results were obtained from 6,000 to 8,000-year-old cemeteries in the Basque area, and since they were also ancient in North America, they were not caused by activities occurring after Columbus. Instead, they reveal an ancient connection. The time estimates on haplogroup X entering America were at first shaky because too few samples had been taken. But later, it seemed, I think that's supposed to say that. It seemed that haplogroup X entered by 28,000 BC and again at 10,000 BC. Ooh. Those appear to be waves of immigration from the Atlantic. The second wave, of course, the second wave corresponds to a date of the sinking of Atlantis as given by Plato. That should count as another supportive discovery. The common origin of both European and American Paleolithic culture from the ancient civilization of Atlantis makes total sense as one continues to ponder the multitude of similarities, especially genetically and culturally. One may ask then, One may ask then, why then? Let me see if I can just understand it first by myself. One may ask then, why then is there not a greater degree of visible Caucasian racial types evident in America today? The answer may be explained through the interaction between dominant and recessive genes. Once the more recently arriving Asians and others, haplogroups A through D, began interbreeding with the prior, more ancient Native Americans, haplogroup X, the recessive genes of blonde/red hair and blue eyes all but completely disappeared. Despite this dilution of recessive traits, there is still some evidence of this earlier racial type in some Native Americans living today. With a population of over 300,000 in Chile, the Araucano appear to be one of the most significant remnant populations of this previous age of blondes and redheads in the New World. Elsewhere, Native Americans have a lesser degree of this Caucasoid heritage, although many Native North Americans are tall with long, narrow skulls, characteristic features of these early Solutrean types. Most Native Americans are blood group O, European, and not B, Asian. The Araucano are also up to around 20% rhesus negative. I should have looked up how to say that. Putting them up there with the Basques as being among the most closely related genetically to the original Upper Paleolithic Europeans. Not only is Rh negative a recessive gene, I think that's what it means, but blonde hair, red hair, green and blue eyes are all recessive genes, and any interbreeding with melanin-dominant brown-eyed, black-haired individuals will lead to the disappearance of these visual characteristics, but they can still be detected genetically. Due to isolation of these early inhabitants, they became vulnerable to widespread disease and not brought in from outside America. This process was also observed in the Pacific by the early explorers. First accounts of Tahiti indicated that over 10% of the population was Caucasoid, but when another ship arrived 8 months later, most of these native Caucasian types had already succumbed to disease brought by the earlier European ships. Despite this, Polynesians placed these people in high esteem, and they were often found in positions of power within Polynesian society. All right, let me get a sip here. Is that how you say it? Rhesus negative? It's Rh though, right? Rh negative. Okay, Rh negative blood factor. Each person's blood is one of 4 major types, A, B, AB, or O. Blood types are determined by the types of antigens on the blood cells. Antigens are proteins on the surface of blood cells that can cause a response from the immune system. The Rh factor is a type of protein on the surface of red blood cells. Most people are Rh positive. Those who do not have the Rh factor are Rh negative. The Rh blood group system, including the Rh factor, is one of the currently 30 human blood group systems. The commonly used terms Rh factor, Rh positive, and Rh negative refer to the D antigen only. Individuals either have or do not have the Rh factor on the surface of their red blood cells. Nearly 85% of all human beings have Rh positive blood. Their red blood cells contain a substance called the rhesus blood factor. This means the positive blood contains a protein that was first discovered in the rhesus monkey, but is not exclusive to it. The antigen is common among all primates. Though chimpanzees, for example, also have different blood groups, they are not the same as human blood types. Rh negative has been a subject worthy of attention to pregnant Rh negative mothers who carry an Rh positive child. In such cases, there may be a need to administer special shots to prevent the mother's own antibodies from killing the fetus. A mother that is Rh negative may develop antibodies to the Rh positive baby, and if a small amount of the baby's blood mixes with hers, an immune reaction may respond as if she were allergic to the baby. The mother's body may make antibodies to the Rh antigens in the baby's blood. This means her antibodies can cross the placenta and attack the baby's blood. They break down the fetus's red blood cells and produce anemia, a potentially fatal condition when the blood has a low number of red blood cells. This condition is called hemolytic disease or hemolytic anemia. It can become severe enough to cause serious illness, brain damage, or even death in the fetus or newborn. This complication has contributed to worldwide speculation of the origin of this unusual blood type, and rightly so. Blood factors are transmitted with exactitude, much more so than any other characteristic. If mankind evolved from the same ancestral population, then one would expect to find that their blood would be more similar, but it's not, which anyone who has ever needed a blood transfusion can attest to. The blood of the gods. In the blood of the gods, Mabel Royce asks, all other earthly primates also have this Rh factor, but this leaves out the people who are Rh negative. If all mankind evolved from the same ancestor, their blood would be compatible. But where did the Rh negative come from? If they are not in the descendants of prehistoric man, could they be the descendants of the ancient astronauts? Oh, and then there's a little diagram chart here that explains the Rh positive, Rh negative blood between the fetus and the mother. When I was in school, my professor, she was amazing, by the way. She said that became a complication after your first child, after your body grew the antigens. But who's to say? All right. If the introduction of Rh negative blood type is not a naturally occurring part of terrestrial evolution, which does not seem to be the case, then was it introduced by an outside source? The Cro-Magnon people of the Paleolithic ocean-borne migration, which populated the northwest coast of Europe, had this very special blood peculiarity that their descendants are still living with today. This was the only tribe in the world with many, if not all, of its members having Rh negative blood. Dr. Luigi Cavalli Sforza published a map of the populations with the frequency percentage of Rh negative blood. He wrote, Rh negative genes are frequent in Europe, infrequent in Africa and West Asia, and virtually absent in East Asia and among the Aboriginal populations of Australia. One can estimate degrees of relatedness by subtracting the percentage of Rh negative individuals among, say, the English, 16%, from that among the Basques, 25%, to find a difference of 9% points. But between the English and East Asians, it became 16% points, a greater distance that perhaps implies a more ancient separation. Interesting. Emily, welcome, welcome. According to the numerous sources, Rh negative blood stems from Upper Paleolithic or Cro-Magnon men. By looking at Rh negative blood type frequencies in different population demographics, it might become possible to identify the geographic origin. On a national level, Australia tops the percentage of Rh negatives with 19%. Among some of the blood tribes still living in the Atlas Mountains of Morocco called Berbers, that percentage is doubled to 40%. Keep in mind, it is not a national average, but restricted to certain local tribes. Another group with legitimate claims of highest rate of Rh negative blood are the Basque. Is it Basques? Basques of the Pyrenees Mountains, reported in different publications as having up to 32%, depending on location. The people of Northwest Ireland, the Highland Scots, and the Western Islanders of Norway all have been 16 and 25%, while the Lapps of Norway and Finland have between around 7%. Comprehensive studies of blood types in the Americas also show that Mayans, Incans, and Araucanians, natives to Chile, have had 5 to 20% of the populations being Rh negative. Based on data published in Distribution of the ABO and Rhesus D blood group in the north of Scotland by Elizabeth S. Brown, the frequency of Rh negatives in Scotland varies between the low number of 10.28% on the Moray coast to 30.44%. Hey, where's Karen? Negatives in the Inverness region on the west coast. I have Scottish blood too. Last, but certainly not least, are many populations of Jewish people, such as the Jewish. I'm sorry for I apologize for my mispronunciations. They abound. The Jewish Karaites of Iraq, which also rank among the densest Rh negative tribes in the world. Here are 8 regional populations that have a higher than 20% rate of Rh negative blood types. The Berbers, namely the Haidu Berbers in the Atlas Mountains region of Morocco, have a percent of Rh negative reaching as high as 40%. The Basque territory, located in the Pyrenees mountain region of Spain and France, has around 35% Rh negative population in the higher regions. Scotland has more than 20% Rh negatives in Oxnard and the Isle of Mull, but can reach as high as 30% in Inverness. Although close by with many similarities, are 1b, Northern Ireland is on a separate island, and its published statistics on its Rh negative population is at 27%. In Switzerland, the towns of Tenna, Versam, and Safien in the Rhone Valley show a frequency of the Rh negative blood frequency at 26.5%. The Dutch municipality Bunschoten Spakenburg in the Netherlands, boy, help me. In the Netherlands, has 20,000 inhabitants. 25% are Rh negative. Bam. Catalonians, part of the autonomous community of Spain, just make the list, topping 20% being Rh negative. And then 8, a study in the 1950s examining a little bit more than 100 Karaite Jews, R1 egg haplogroup, revealed the percentage of Rh negative within that group somewhere around 28%. Did I miss Alex? Welcome, welcome. Okay. We could have descendants of Ice Age Atlanteans scattered throughout the massive continents of North and South America. All modern scientific theories choose to ignore the possibility of a large Cro-Magnon populated landmass, Atlantis, lying in the central North Atlantic, which could easily have provided migrations of Cro-Magnon populations in both directions to Europe and America during the Ice Age. Edgar Cayce, the famous American mystic known as the Sleeping Prophet, had suggested that some of the people that fled the sinking continent went west and settled and became the Iroquois. Others went east to the Iberian Peninsula in the Pyrenees, the Basques or Basques, and the west coast of North Africa, the Gaunches, and the Atlantis Mountains, the Berbers. The Basque. Nestled in the mountains between France and Spain, there is a semi-isolated population of native European people that have long puzzled anthropologists, linguistics, and historians, because although they are Caucasoid, they do not fit in with the rest of the European populations. Their language, for example, is distinctly unique in Europe and not related to any other Indo-European tongue. But that is not the only thing that is unique about the Basque. Prior to the advent of genetic research tools, investigators used the ABO blood groups to study the relationships between human populations as well as their migration patterns. The Basques turned out to also be unique in terms of blood. As a population, they contain among the highest levels of Rh negative blood in the world and among the lowest type B. These people currently inhabit the area surrounding the Pyrenees Mountains, where Cro-Magnon left behind some of his/her most famous artwork over 30,000 years ago. But exactly who are the Basque and where did they come from? I decided that a great place to find out is the University of Nevada, since it houses the Center for Basque Studies. This organization is primarily a research center that conducts and publishes on Basque-related topics such as anthropology, history, cultural studies, etc. Here is what they had to say about the Basque people and their origins. This is from their website's facts page. Question: who are the Basque? Answer: the Basques are a people who live in a small region about the size of Rhode Island that straddles the border of Spain and France from the sea in the west to the Pyrenees in the east. This area is called Euskal Herria, comprising 7 provinces. Basques speak a language called Euskara, but today only about 25% of the population is fluent in that language. The Basque population is distinguished physically by a high incidence of Rh negative factor in the blood. Question: where do the Basque come from? Answer: no one knows exactly where the Basque come from. Some say they have lived in that area since Cro-Magnon man first roamed Europe. Some say they are descended from the original Iberians. More fanciful theorists exist as well. One is that the Basques are the descendants of the survivors of Atlantis. Question: where does the Basque language come from? Answer: just as no one is sure about the origins of the Basques themselves, linguists are not in agreement over the origin of Euskara, the Basque language, either. Although there are theories, none of them proven beyond a doubt, that Basque is related to other languages, such as Georgian family of languages, in the Caucasus, dang it, in the Caucasus, or the Berber language family, Cro-Magnon Atlanteans of Africa, or even the Quechua language of Latin America. When asked, I found that the majority of the Basque people themselves maintain that they came from Atlantica, a powerful maritime nation that sank into the Atlantic Ocean after a terrible cataclysm, and from which a few survivors reached the Bay of Biscay and the Pyrenees Mountains. This, they say, is not just mythology, but their true pre-European ancestry. There's a lot of really cool videos about this too, by the way. You can check them out, and books. But hey, Heidi, welcome, my girl. It may be true that the Basque language, Euskara, is unrelated to any Indo-European speech. However, it does seem to share some affinity with Finno-Ugric, Patumili. Haha, dang it. This big word, spoken in ancient Troy. Etruscan, possibly descended from the Trojans. Gaunch, spoken by the prior/first native inhabitants of the Canary Islands, and Nahuatl, the language of the Aztecs, and amazingly, the Ainu, native indigenous inhabitants of Japan. Cool. Those long dead languages are not well understood today, but the fact that Basque Euskara contains similarities with the languages of at least 4 presumably Atlantean peoples warrant further investigation. Author Stuart Webb states that Atalia, it is the name of an ancient ceremonial mound in Biarritz, Basque County. Atalia is also a sacred mountain in the Valley of Mexico venerated by the Aztecs. Atalaya is a site in southern Portugal featuring Bronze Age domed tombs dating to the 13th century BC. Atalia is in Gran Canaria, where pyramids built by the Gaunches in black, white, and red volcanic stone, the same construction materials described for Atlantis by Plato, I was thinking the same thing, may still be seen. The same Italy derives from Atalia when, according to Etruscan traditions, Atlas ruled there in prehistory. Italy means, literally, the domain of Atlas, whose daughter was Atlantis. Right? This is so fun. Oh, gosh. All right. Professor Henry Fairfield Osborne, 1915 to 1923, declared that the Cro-Magnon people of the Stone Age left 2 cultural relics that survived into modern times. The first being the Berber-speaking Gaunches of the Canary Islands, and secondly, the unique Basque language of Western Europe. In regard to the extreme age of the Basque language, the distinguished British scholar Michael Harrison once wrote, in support of the theory that Basque, if not an it's a big word that means native, autochthonous, a native language. Okay, in the support of the theory that the Basque, if not a native language, is at least one of the most primitive languages of Europe, in the sense of its being here before any of the existing others, is the fact that Basque is still a language with no proven congeners. Interesting. Hey, welcome, Little Wing. Yes, so good. Looking at the linguistic and other cultural connections by such widely diverse and otherwise unrelated peoples as the Basque, Gaunches, Aztecs, and Etruscans, one might possibly conclude that all of them were impacted earlier in their histories by culture bearers from Atlantis. It is now clear that Atalia carries the same connotations in Etrusca, Nahuatl, nah, nah, nah. Dang it! I said it first right. Nahuatl, Iberian, and Gaunch. The description of a sacred mound-like structure or mountain. Is it not reasonable to suspect that these peoples all fell within the Atlantean sphere of influence? The Euskara's resemblance to certain North American Indian languages, particularly Algonquin Lenape or Lenape, is also established. R. Cedric Lenner considers the linguistic connections. The extinct Iberian language, which are found on ancient day tablets, is also considered to be related to modern Basque. Is this language a version of one spoken by an earlier stage of Cro-Magnon man? While the meanings and definitions of words are considered to be primitive, the actual syntax is extremely complex and orderly. Both the Romans and Carthaginians recorded that Basque was originally very widespread, including affinities with the Moroccan Berbers in North Africa. Professor Johannes Frederick, the leading linguist and expert on Berber, claims the language has not changed in almost 2,000 years. Welsh, Erse, and Gaelic use the same complicated syntax that Basque does. I got that thing. What is it? It's like an app that teaches you how to speak Gaelic. I don't know. I didn't stick with it. Maybe because it was so vastly and drastically different. I was really struggling. But I don't know. I think that anyways, right. Languages. Professor is that where I am? Professor Johannes Frederick, the leading linguistic of an expert, or did I read that whole thing? Berber, claims the language has not changed in almost 2,000 years. Yeah, I did, I think. Welsh, Erse, and Gaelic, or Gaelic, use the same complicated syntax and blah, 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 blah. Peculiar adopted Celtic words into its vocabulary, but maintained the syntax. It is suggested by a growing number of linguistics that pre-Celtic Welsh was identical to Basque. Ah, interesting. All right. The Maya continue to this day to speak their language, and to the surprise of a Basque missionary during the 1500s, came to convert them, found that they spoke a very similar language with a slight difference in pronunciation. I love this shit. Okay. Both the Greeks and the Basques of ancient times shared astro-theological myths, such as the first people were centaurs. Chiron. All right. The very word centaur is derived from the Basque word zalzaval, horseman. Many prehistoric cave paintings in the Pyrenees depict the horse, and one of the oldest Basque festivals, the Riogdan dance, features a man in the horse costume, Zamalzane, the horseman, dancing around a cup, variously referred to as the Grail. The Grail inside, right? In fact, the Basques used to refer to themselves as the descendants of the centaurs, the Cantivers, who came to the earth in the center of an ancient island. Plato writes of horse domestication and even horse races in Atlantean times. All right. American linguistic R. Cedric. American linguistic. Whoa. American linguist R. Cedric Leonard has much to say on the subject, containing the term Berber-Ibero-Basque language complex, and attempting to identify the earliest patterns of linguistics linking Europe and the Mediterranean. Mud! Mwah! It is wonderful to have you here. Oh my gosh, it's so good to see you. Holy cremoles. I get so excited, I lose my place. Oh yeah, I'm getting ready to talk about the linking of the linguistics. Okay. The various dialects of what I believe was the original language of the Atlanteans accompanied the Cro-Magnon people as they swept into the western portions of Europe and Africa from Atlantis. The remains of this phenomenon exist to this day in what I call the Berber-Ibero-Basque language complex. This complex stretched from Mexico in North Africa. From Morocco in North Africa across Gibraltar into the Iberian Peninsula, on up to the Dordogne Valley of France and Brittany, continuing northward to the British Isles. If such an Atlantic language did exist, we will have identified the Atlantean language, at least provisionally. At the very least, we can ask if such a unified, widespread language did not come from Atlantis. From where did it come? Noting that the tribes of Berbers of North Africa were also of Cro-Magnon lineage, R. Cedric Leonard goes on to say, professional anthropologists have already postulated in a classic work on European ethnology that the modern-day Basque people of the Pyrenees Mountain, northern Spain, southern France, speak a language inherited directly from Cro-Magnon man. To give a couple of illustrative examples of the reasons for this above postulation, the Basque euskara, which is word for knife, means literally stone that cuts, and their word for ceiling means top of the cavern. Ethnologist Michael A. Echeverry states his opinion that the Basques, having fought off assimilation by the Romans, Visigoths, Moors, the Moors. I say that because of the Oralinda saga, and then the Bach saga, which are really interesting stories of how we came to be. They're, fantastically, they're so interesting. But I learned about that after the 10 ancient benevolent kings, the 10 kings. Well, it's not like they just stopped having babies. Then they had the Moors, and then that created more. Anyways, fascinating stuff. That's where my head was. Okay. Let me see if I can find where I am. Okay. Oh, yeah. Ethnologist Michael A. Echeverry states his opinion that the Basques, having fought off assimilation by the Romans, Visigoths, Moors, and Franks, were themselves a direct descendant of the Ice Age Cro-Magnon people who had, more than any others, avoided both the modification of their genetic makeup and their language during the following era of Neolithic expansion. Right? This whole path and everything. I'm just remembering that I got into this stuff because I started learning about Hitler. All right. The famous German son of a gun. Oh, is it philologist? Philologist? The famous German philologist Wilhelm von Humboldt was convinced of the existence of a single great Iberian people in ancient times, speaking a distinct non-European language of their own. He proposed that these ancient Iberian people once extended through southern France into Brittany and on into British Isles, even including the Mediterranean islands of Sicily, Sardinia, and Corsica. Humboldt also contended that the Basque of modern times are remnants of that once widespread Atlantic seaboard population. German anthropologist Otto Muck adds some more insight into the origins of Basque. According to Fink, one of the greatest authorities on comparative son of a gun, it's a study. Dang it. Comparative philo dang it. Philology. Philology. Oh no. Okay. According to Fink, the lesser known languages of the prehistoric inhabitants of the Mediterranean region are distantly related to ancient Basque, and we know that the oldest Italic Aboriginal tribe was called Osai, identical with Aussie and Vascones. If we take these and all of the foregoing facts into account, we begin to get a picture of a worldwide complex of linguistic relationships that transcend time and space. We can see Basque, an oddity among modern European languages, as the last relic of a prehistoric world language that was spoken on both sides of the Atlantic. Otto Muck then shares this. Can we find any solid reasons for believing that here in the Basques, a relic of Atlantis has been preserved? The Basques themselves provide one. They still have a clear memory of Atlantis. Ernst von Salomon mentions this in his travel book, Boek and Frankenrich. In about the year 1930, he met a Basque smuggler with aquiline features. What does that mean? Aquiline features, who talked to him about his people. Von Salomon continues, the Basques, he said, were the last relics of a more beautiful, freer, prouder world, long ago sunk below the sea together with Atlantis, one of whose last remaining pillars was the Pyrenees, and the other the mountain of Morocco. I wonder if that's why I always wanted one of those awesome Pyrenees dogs. They slobber so much, though, and my apartment's not that big. Interesting. Nut job. Okay. It should be noted that the Basques and civilizations far away, such as the Aryans of India, that had never been in physical contact with each other, living in widely separated areas, yet both have the ancient swastika symbol in common, as well as a plethora of linguistic affinities. Therefore, the characteristics they shared with the distant cultures must have been acquired from a common source, which, in my opinion, must have been a global seafaring civilization, possibly Atlantis, according to the famous linguist Louis Farrar. The fact is indisputable and is eminently noteworthy that while the affinities of the Basque roots have never been conclusively elucidated, there has never been any doubt that this isolated language, preserving its identity in a western corner of Europe between two mighty kingdoms, resembles, in its grammatical structure, the Aboriginal language of the vast opposite continent. In 1940, Alexander Brogin wrote in his book, The Shadow of Atlantis, the following about native tribal linguistics. When in Guatemala, I often heard about one Indian tribe living in the Petén district, North Guatemala. This tribe speaks a language resembling Basque, and I have heard of an occasion when a Basque missionary preached in Petén in his own idiom with great success. Alexander Brogin goes on to compare the language of the Basque to what is spoken by people in Japan and Mexico. As to the resemblance of the Japanese and Basque languages, I once saw a list of analogous words with the same significance in both tongues, and I was stupefied by the quantity of such words. The word Yokohama, for instance, signifies in Basque seahorse city, and everyone knows the great port of Yokohama in Japan. A very interesting Indian tribe called the Otomis lives in the neighborhood of Tula in Mexico. These Indians speak the old Japanese idiom. And once the Japanese ambassador to Mexico visited this tribe, he talked with them in this old dialect, taking into consideration all these facts and observations, I would like to offer the following conjecture. It is likely that the immigration from Atlantis developed in two directions, eastward and westward. All right, the Berbers. Welcome, welcome all. Any newbies? Anyone listening later? Modern Cro-Magnon people can be found in certain parts of Western Europe, North Africa, and some of the Atlantic islands today. Physical anthropologists agree that Cro-Magnon is represented in modern times by the populations such as the Berber and Tuareg peoples of North Africa, the recently extinct Gaunches of the Canary Islands, the Basques of northern Spain, the Aquitanians living in Dordogne Valley in Brittany, in France, and until lately, those living on the Isle d'Oléron, or the Isle Oléron. This indicated by obviously Cro-Magnon-like skulls. The Berbers are currently located geographically around Mount Atlas, but inhabited much of North Africa long before the Arabs arrived. The Berbers are considered the aboriginals of the area, and their origins beyond that are not officially known. Many theories have been advanced relating them to the Canaanites, the Phoenicians, the Celts, and the Caucasians from Anatolia. In classical times, the Berbers formed such states as Mauritania and Numidia. It is unfortunate that the Berbers have not received more attention from science over the years. Here we have a Caucasoid race, many of whom have blue eyes and light hair, living in Northwest Africa, of all places. Anthropologists, for the most part, dismissed them for many years because they did not fit well with their out-of-Africa paradigm. So it was presumed that they had back-migrated from somewhere in Europe. However, that theory has been abandoned with the current understanding of genetics. Scientists now generally accept the genetic evidence that concludes Berbers are an indigenous people, which they believe are descended from native Upper Paleolithic people straight back to the Pleistocene, the Ice Age. They are an ancient people with a very high frequency of haplogroup X and Rh negative blood types. Among the Berbers, the lightest skin pigmentation recorded is that of the Riphians, the Berbers retaining the most recessive traits, European looking. 10% have light brown or blonde hair. The blondes tend to be golden or reddish. Concerning blondism among the Berbers, Dr. Jean Hiberneau, the director of research at the National Center for Scientific Research in Paris, writes, "The relatively high incidence of blondism in North Africa has raised much speculation. Has it evolved locally, or does it represent an admixture of European elements from an area where blondism has a high incidence? Both views are tenable." The Cro-Magnon distribution map shows archaeological sites in northern Morocco. Those are today the Berbers. Authors have oftentimes been of the opinion that both Iberian and Basque originated in Berber country. Why? Because of the affinities which exist between these two languages and the modern Berber tongue. But even though these languages are apparently related, why imagine they all originated in North America? A glance at any map of the Atlantic Ocean will show the geographical proximity of those areas to Plato's Atlantis. If Cro-Magnon simultaneously appeared on the western shores of both continents, as most physical anthropologists insist, then so did this language. No evidence has been found to indicate that Cro-Magnon's origin was in North Africa. So why would this language originate there? The Canary Island Gaunches. The Gaunches were very tall, powerfully built, blonde and red-haired indigenous natives of the Canary Islands, specifically in the island of Tenerife, maybe. Early Spanish accounts seem to indicate at least 3 distinct populations, each inhabiting different islands, and that one group exhibited physical traits also seen in Northern European populations. One of the earliest reports of the Canary Islands comes from Pliny, who, in the 1st century, spoke of an expedition sent by the king of Mauritania, which brought back giant dogs as a souvenir of the trip. That makes me think of that Disney movie. Anyways. This is the origin of the name of the islands, Canary Islands, from can or canes. Magnificent examples of these native domesticated hunting dogs can still be found in the islands, where they are called verdinos on some islands and bardinos on others. Oh, Lord. To date, there is still no evidence that the Gaunches had boats or any knowledge of maritime tech. Begs the question, how did they get there? This isolation allowed the Gaunch to maintain a racial exclusivity until the time of the Spanish conquest. However, the name came to be incorrectly applied to the indigenous populations of all the islands in caps. The name comes from Guan, which equals person, and Chine, which equals Tenerife or man of Tenerife, person of Guan Chine. Okay. According to the Encyclopedia Britannica, 11th edition, concerning the ethnic origins and racial identity of the Canary Island Gaunches, the Gaunches are thought to be of Cro-Magnon origin, with blue or gray eyes and blondish hair. Isolated in their islands, the Gaunches preserved their pristine Cro-Magnon genetic traits in a more or less pure fashion until the arrival of the Spanish. Just about exterminated by the Spaniards at the turn of the 13th century, these people left behind not only pyramid structures in stone, but also mummies. It is hard to miss the resemblance between the Egyptian, Mayan, and Gonch cultures in their usage of pyramids and mummification of their dead. And then there's a picture here, lava stone pyramids in Tenerife, and researched by Thor. Oh yeah. Oh my God. Crap. I read about him. He is so awesome. He helped change our thoughts at the turn of the century, basically. Heyerdahl. I think that's how you say it. Here's a picture. There's actually a really good movie on Amazon about it. I can't remember what it's called. Okay. Found primarily in caves, not in the pyramids, Gaunch mummies once numbered in the thousands. Today, only a handful remains, mostly in museum collections, which probably won't be on display. The scientific study of Gaunch mummies has been almost non-existent. The following information is based only on the mummies discovered on Tenerife. There, the Gaunches removed the internal organs of their royalty or members of their high society. Bodies were embalmed in red ochre and were most likely dried out in the sun first. You know, I don't know. I just, for some reason, I have my thumb on here so I don't lose my spot. But I was just like doing research about like what's happening in the stars and the sky and stuff this last week, or just yesterday, in preparation for my weekly video. And dang it, I just lost my train of thought. Where was I? Son of a gun. Oh yeah. And I found this website that shows the lunar calendar, and it talks about on each day what energy that's associated with our organs. And I don't know, that just, it's fascinating how all of that stuff intermingles. And what book were we reading? Oh yeah, The Way of the Fertile Soul, where she addressed all of the different organs and what they're associated with, and how our liver is like our, it's like our source, it's like our connecting, it's where it all starts, sort of. But anyways, all these different organs being in different places, I'm sure it has, I wonder, right? It's cool. Okay. So bodies were embalmed in red ochre and were most likely dried out in the sun first. At the end of the process, the mummy was wrapped in animal skins, such as goat skins. Kings received 10 to 15 skins. Other individuals received many fewer. Then it was placed in a cave on a special mummy board. Finally, a stone wall was erected around the mummy. These factors, drying, cave burial, stone wall, also helped ensure that the mummy would be preserved. Right, so it has a lot to do with preservation too, right? Okay. Today, due to some intermarriage, some traits of the Cro-Magnon still appear, such as when individuals will sometimes be taller and blonde. But for the most part, the culture of the Gaunches was wiped out. What remains can be found on the island's main museum, which, according to their own promotional literature, is also home to the world's largest collection of Cro-Magnon skulls. Professor Retzius, in a 1859 issue of the Smithsonian report, says, with regard to the primitive dolichocephal, I think that means the large jaw thing with on the head, cephaletic. Oh yeah. Those who have yeah, it says it right here. Those who have a head usually long, front to back. Okay. Relative to width, as does Cro-Magnon, of America, I entertain a hypothesis still more bold, namely, that they are nearly related to the Gaunches of the Canary Islands and to the Atlantic populations of Africa, the Moors, the Tuareg, Copts. The Latham comprises under the name of Egyptian Atlantic. Son of a gun. Comprises under the name of Egyptian Atlantic. We find one and the same from the skull of the Canary Islands in front of the African coast and in the Carib Islands on the opposite coast, which faces Africa. Madame Blavatsky, one of the most famous occult researchers of the 19th century, points out the genetic relations between these populations well over 100 years before our modern understanding of DNA. And then there's a picture of her. Oh, here's a picture too. Did I show this to you? Oh, yeah, I did. This is Madame Helena Blavatsky. I can't figure. Okay. If, then, Basques and Cro-Magnon cavemen are of the same race as the Canarese Gaunches, It follows that the former are also allied to the Aborigines of America. This is the conclusion which the dependent investigations of Retzius, Virchow, and Dequataphagus, or Phagus, necessitate. The Atlantean affinities of these three types became patent. Here, once again, she is quite clear as to where the Gaunches originally came from, long before the human genome was sequenced and proper DNA analysis could be carried out. The stories we have, right? Yeah. Okay. I got here when this chapter ends, I'm going to pee real quick and then I'll be back to read more. I hope, how we getting there? Because I do have to pee. Are we getting there? Yeah, okay, this is the last page. Okay, great. I'm such a dork. All right. Okay, she was quite clear before DNA analysis. Okay. She says, the Gaunches were lineal. The Gaunches were lineal descendants of the Atlanteans. This fact will account for the great stature evidenced by their old skeletons as well as those of their European congeners, that Cro-Magnon Paleolithic men. Okay, I got to do that again. I didn't even understand it. The Gaunches were lineal descendants of the Atlanteans. This fact will account for the great stature evidenced by their old skeletons, as well as by those of their European congeners, the Cro-Magnon Paleolithic men. And finally, Blavatsky claims that all of European Paleolithic men, or Ice Age Europeans, are of Atlantean ancestry. Paleolithic European man of the Miocene and Pliocene times was a pure Atlantean, as we have previously stated. The Basques are, of course, of a much later date than this, but their affinities, as here shown, go far to prove the original extraction of their remote ancestors. Okay. All right. I'm going to pause for the cause. I got to pee something fierce. And I will be back in, I don't know, a couple of minutes, hopefully, really fast. I'm going to just put my, let's see. How do I do all that? I forget. Stop cam. Okay. I'll be right back. Intermission. All right. I have relieved my bladder and I'm going to go into chapter 5. Hey, Singe, welcome. Awesome. Very good. Welcome all. Welcome everyone for this interesting reading. Okay, chapter 5. One of the oldest documented prehistoric symbols is perhaps most famously known as the swastika in India, but also the Pfalfot in England, the Hakenkreuz in Germany, the Tetragrammaton in Greece, the Wan in China, and the Jumanji in Japan. In this 1896 book called The Swastika, the earliest known symbol and its migrations, Thomas Wilson, curator of the Department of Prehistoric Anthropology in the U.S. National Museum, wrote, "An Aryan symbol used by the Aryan peoples before their dispersion through Asia and Europe. This is a fair subject for inquiry and might serve as an explanation how, as a sacred symbol, the swastika might have been carried to the different peoples and countries in which we now find it by the splitting up of the Aryan peoples and their migrations and establishments in the various parts of Europe. This sacred solar symbol has been an object of profound veneration among widely dispersed ancient cultures from the earliest times. It is seen on Buddha zodiacs. It is one of the symbols in the Asaka inscriptions. It is the sectarian mark of the Jains and the distinctive badge of the sect." Okay, so here's there's more words. Of the sect of Zaka Japonius or Japonius. The Vaishnavs of India have also the same sacred sign. Also adorned by the followers of the Lama of Tibet, north of Mexico. It occurs amongst the Mixtecos in the Caradaro. Sigantaza mentions an Indian cross, which was found in the cave at Mixteca Baja, among the ruins on the island of Zapuerto in Lake Nicaragua, where were also found similar crosses revered by the Indians. The swastika symbol was used by the Aztecs and was on the coat of arms of the Mexican state of Sonora around 1930. So here's a bunch of pictures. We've got, how do I see too? Okay. I always struggle with this shit. I don't know. I can't. Let's see here. India, Russia, Germany, USA, Greece, Poland, Navajo, Tibet, Peru, Haiti, or Hittite. Shit. Thracian, Saxon, Korean, Iran, Italy, Aztec, Ethiopian, Japan, Anasazi, Basque, Sumer, Hopewell, Israel, Armenian, Apache. Pre-Columbian Hopewell Green State Serpent Swastika origin. The Mississippi Valley, USA, circa 200 BC. All right. Swastika-shaped artifacts have been found in excavations of sites in the Ohio and Mississippi River valleys. It was also widely used by many southwestern tribes, most notably the Hopi and the Navajo. After learning of the Nazi association and political leverage from the U.S. government, the Navajo discontinued use of the symbol. In South America, the same sign was considered symbolical and sacred. It was revered in Paraguay. Among the Musquias at Camana, various crosses were regarded with devotion and believed to be endowed with power to drive away evil spirits. Consequently, newborn children were placed under the sign. A swastika composed of Hebrew letters as a mystical symbol from the Jewish Kabbalistic work Parashut Eliezer. The symbol is enclosed by a circle and surrounded by a cyclical hymn of Aramaic. The hymn, which refers explicitly to the power of the sun, as well as the shape, shows strong solar symbolism. Here's the sun swastika that they're talking about in Jewish. This mandala-like symbol is an adaptation from the earlier Hebrew symbol meaning eternity in motion, and is meant to help a mystic to complete on the cyclic nature and structure of the universe. The letters are the initial and final characters of the Hebrew word for light. That's really similar to some other stuff too in the Bach saga. Okay. On the eastern slope of the Andes Mountains in northern Peru, forests cloak the ruins of a pre-Inca civilization, the size and scope of which explorers and archaeologists are only now beginning to understand. Known as the Chacapoya, the civilization covered an estimated 25,000 square miles, 65,000 square kilometers. They were distinguished by fair skin, great height, and how they lived in stone circle houses, primarily on ridges in mountaintops. Did I show this to you already? Swastika adorned pottery on display at the Peruvian Museum. The name Chacapoya is in fact the name that was given to this culture by the Inca. The name that these people may have used to refer to themselves is not known. They are nicknamed the Warriors of the Cloud, or the Cloud People. Pedro Cezo de Leon was one of the earliest and most prolific of the Spaniard chroniclers and wrote about the Chacapoyas. They are the whitest and most handsome of all the people that I have seen in the Indies, and their wives were so beautiful that because of their gentleness, many of them deserved to be the Inca wives and to also be taken to the Sun Temple. Accounts such as that of César de Leon indicate that the Chacapoyas had lighter skin than other South American peoples, blue or green eyes, and blonde hair. This poses an enduring mystery for scholars of the region as to their ultimate origin. The Chacapoyas were killed by epidemics of European diseases, such as measles and smallpox, soon after the Spanish arrived. Since they had sided with the conquistadors against their enemy, the Inca, this close proximity to the Spanish may have proved especially fatal. Okay, this is a picture of a Gaunch mummy of the Museo Nacional de Antropología, the National Museum of Anthropology in Madrid, Spain. Spain! We have friends in Spain right now. Mummified Gaunch on display in Tenerife, Canary Islands. I don't know. Botchins, we'll see. All right. Much of their way of life was also destroyed by pillaging, leaving little for archaeologists to examine. However, intact skeletons have been found. Some even show clear evidence of ancient bone surgery. A cache of more than 200 mummies was found in Peru in late 1996 by machete-wielding grave robbers cutting through the cloth wrappings, looking for jewelry and other treasures. Ay, ay, ay! The mummies were originally discovered in cave-like niches set in the cliff of an area of northern Peru called Laguna de las Sedores, near Limambamba. The people seem to have purposefully selected dry caves for the burials. Another group of Chacapoya mummies were discovered in late 2006 by a farmer in a burial cave complex some 82 feet below the Earth's surface. The cave is known as Sayakuj, or Enchanted Water, by local people. When team leader and archaeologist Herman Corbera was interviewed, he remarked, "This is a discovery of transcendental importance. It is the first time any kind of underground burial site this size has been found belonging to the Chacapoyas or other cultures in this region." Wow, right? Who heard about that in 1996? Do you guys remember that? I don't. Okay. Peruvian archaeologist Sonia Gillen had a chance to work on the site with the actual mummies herself and said, "Two of the mummies are more than 1,000 years old. Some of the mummies have become skeletons. Others were preserved in funerary bundles." In 2007, an article was published about the most recent find, the, quote, biggest freestanding Chacapoya structure in the world. The structure was nicknamed the Jaca in Penitenciaria de la Meseta, the penitentiary, by its discoverers because of its tall stone walls. It consists of two rectangular ceremonial platforms on one side of the plaza, in the middle of the plateau, called La Meseta. Not the mountaintops usually associated with the Chacapoya, about 6,000 feet above sea level on the eastern side of the Andes. Hey, there was never an unquote. Weird. Or maybe I haven't gotten there. This site, likely a town or ceremonial center, has been covered for centuries by a forest. Since the site is still mostly unexplored, it remains to be seen whether any mummies are inside, though they may well have been prepared here. Well, that was the end of the paragraph. Weird. Okay. Biggest probably was supposed to be biggest, quote, biggest, unquote. Okay. There isn't much left of the city of Tiahuanaco in Bolivia. In the 1500s, the Spanish systematically destroyed the buildings. Later, many of the stone blocks were looted for houses in the nearby village. Most recently, more stone was taken to lay a new railroad. Despite this, what is left is still a sight to see. Tiahuanaco is old. It was already in ruins when the Incas took over the area in 1200 AD. It is situated on a mountain at the altitude of 12,500 feet and boasts a pyramid, 700 feet long, 500 feet wide, and 50 feet tall. There is also a temple 440 feet long, topped with columns up to 14 feet high that may have once supported a roof. To me, the most impressive thing about Tiahuanaco isn't its architecture, but the legend surrounding the identity of the builders. Passed down through oral tradition, the stories tell of how the city was originally constructed by a race of tall, fair-skinned god men with beards. He was called Viracocha by the Incas, Kukulkan by the Mayans and Quetzalcoatl by the Aztecs. Right? Oh my gosh. Okay. Gucumots in Central America, Votan in Palenque, and Zama in Izamel. Son of a gun! I love those sentences. Where 90% of the words I've never said out loud before. Trace! Yes! Welcome, my girl. And congrats! Oh, baby Oliver. Oh my gosh, congrats. Okay. He, and in some cases his men, were described as being tall, bearded, with white skin and beautiful emerald blue eyes. According to an early European explorer, it was said that Viracocha, I think that's how you say it, that sounds right, gave rules to men how they should live, and he spoke lovingly to them with much kindness, admonishing them they should be kind to each other. Yeah, and ourselves, right? Okay. There are similar stories about visits by a bearded white man among the Aztec and Mayans. He was called Quetzalcoatl by the Aztecs and Kukulkan by the Mayans. Fray Juan Torquemada, the Franciscan missioner, who collected numerous traditions about Quetzalcoatl from the natives of Old Mexico, says Quetzalcoatl had blonde hair and wore a black robe sewn with little crosses of red color. How did blonde-haired men arrive in Peru long before the Spanish did? Cedro Mutwa, the 94-year-old Zulu shaman, or Sanusi in Africa, claims that this picture he had painted of tall, blonde-haired, blue-eyed beings had been seen by Black African tribes people throughout that continent long before the white Europeans arrived. Credo, an official historian of the Zulu nation, said that when the European first came, the Black Africans thought they were the return of these same white gods, which they called the Zungu or Mzungu. As a result, they called the European settlers by the same name. This was very much the same reaction as the Central American peoples when Cortez and his Spanish invasion party arrived in 1519, and they thought that he was the returning god, Quetzalcoatl, who was also described as tall, bearded, and blue-eyed. Okay, so this is a picture here. El Conejo de la Luna. I don't know. I've been reading too long. I actually have very good vision, but Quetzalcoatl. I don't know. It's tiny, tiny. Oh, you know what? I'll probably be able to read it better up here. Oh, it's in Spanish. Image of blonde Quetzalcoatl from a public school textbook in Mexico. Oh, that helps everything. Okay, all right. I was like, man, I'm really having trouble understanding these words. I did take a couple of years of Spanish, but I am not fluent. Okay, so the Spanish conquistador Francisco Pizarro, probably, asked the natives of Peru who the white-skinned redheads were. The Inca Indians replied that they were the last descendants of Viracachas. The Viracachas, they said, were the divine race of white bearded men. They were so like the Spanish that the Europeans were called Viracachas the moment they came to the Inca Empire. The Incas thought they were the Viracachas who had come sailing back across the Pacific. According to the principal Inca legend, before the region of the first Inca, the sun god, Kantiki, oh, really? Kantiki Viracocha. Huh. I didn't know that that was the first part. Kantiki. Awesome. All right. Had taken leave of his kingdom in present-day Peru and sailed off to the Pacific with all his subjects. The white men had abandoned their pyramid and statues had gone. Okay, I'm sorry. I gotta get my head here. I'm just having a lot of thoughts, so I have to pay attention. Since the last time I read this book, I have learned other things, and so I'm having lots of things firing in my brain right now. Okay. Oh, so cool. Okay, I'm here. Am I? Where am I? Okay. All right, we'll start on that paragraph again. According to the principal Inca legend, before the region of the first Inca, the sun god, Kantiki Viracocha, Kantiki Viracocha, had taken leave of his kingdom in present-day Peru and sailed off into the Pacific with all his subjects. The white men had abandoned their pyramids and statues and gone with the leader, Kantiki Viracocha, first up to Cusco and then down to the Pacific. They were given the Incan name of Viracocha, or sea foam, because they were white-skinned and vanished like foam over the sea. Cusco is the historic capital city of the Inca Empire. Built out of stone and once adorned with gold, it is in southeastern Peru, near the Urubamba Valley of the Andes mountain range. It is a tourist destination and receives 1 million visitors a year. 2,000 years ago, a mysterious and little-known civilization with a blue-eyed elite ruled the northern coast of Peru. Its people were called the Mochi, or Mochi. Let's say Mochi. They built huge pyramids that still dominate the surrounding countryside, some well over 100 feet tall. Archaeologists working at Peru's Jauca Pucliana ruins recently pulled a blue-eyed mummy from an ancient tomb thought to be from the ancient warrior culture that flourished before the Incas. Piercing blue eyes, undimmed by the passing of 1,300 years. This is the Lady of the Mask, a mummy with striking blue eyes, whose discovery could reveal the secrets of a lost culture at the Jauca Puliani Pyramid. Jauca Puliani. It's pretty. Jauca Puliani Pyramid located in Lima, Peru. One day, Peru. It is the first time a tomb from the region's Wari culture has been discovered intact and gives historians a chance to learn about the ancient pre-Incan civilizations. So then there's this pre-Incan blue-eyed culture. Here's a picture of it, the figure. All right. And then what is we down here? Oh, man. The Cusco stones in Peru. Sacsayhuaman. Yeah, all right. One of the first things people notice when exploring the ancient ruins in Peru are the beautiful ashlar blocks for which the Incas are so well known, are often sitting directly on top of much larger stones known as polygonal style, which are massive megalithic constructions. Okay, so those are these pictures, all right? And that's Sacsayhuaman. Massive stone walls. Do you see the way they're made? It's pretty sweet, right? Oh, the work which is attributed to the Inca culture are primarily 2-ton stone blocks, where the earlier blocks are around 300 tons. Ha ha! Archaeologists tend to agree that the larger, earlier polygonal stone constructions predate the Inca and belong to an earlier structure. Since these earlier constructions have never been dated, no one knows how long they have been there before the Incas. The size, though impressive, is not the main attraction. Their irregular shape and angle of the stones is what usually catches people's eye right away. Some of the blocks have many angles or sides and fit together perfectly without the use of any mortar. How was this achieved? What do the locals themselves say? Go to the source, right? Thor Heyerdahl was a world-famous Norwegian adventurer and ethnographer with a background in zoology, botany, and geography. He became notable for his Kon-Tiki epic expedition in 1947. You should read his book. It's very good. Maybe we'll read it here. In which he sailed 5,000 miles or 8,000 kilometers across the Pacific Ocean in a land-built raft from South America to the Tuamotu Islands. The expedition shattered long-held isolationist theories by demonstrating that ancient people could have made long sea voyages, creating contracts between separate cultures. Oh, you know what, too? There's a movie you can see. It's called Kon-Tiki. It's so good. It's very good. Thor Heyerdahl. Okay, Thor's successful and much celebrated ocean expedition was linked to a diffusionist model of cultural development, which is supported by modern linguistic, archaeological, and genetic evidence, but often downplayed in academia. Heyerdahl, subsequently made other voyages designed to demonstrate the possibility of contact between widely separated ancient people. In his 1948 classic, The Kon-Tiki Expedition by Raft Across the South Seas, Thor describes the ancient legends concerning the origin, inhabitants, or gods of South America. The Incas acknowledged that the extensive ruins predated their own rise to power. How are these ancients, that's a typo. How these ancients were able to bring such gigantic blocks of stone to the top of the mountain from the quarries many miles away? One of these, I'm just actually going to cross out one of those words for the next time I come in here. Okay. How these ancients were able to bring such gigantic blocks of stone to the top of the mountains from these quarries many miles away? ? How were they then able to shape the stones to fit so well together? Hiram Bingham is credited with rediscovering Machu Picchu in 1911, and he relates, the modern Peruvians are very fond of speculating as to the method which the pre-Incas employed to make their stones fit so perfectly. One of the favorite stories is that the Incas knew of a plant whose juices rendered the surface of a block so soft that the marvelous fitting was accomplished by rubbing the stones together for a few minutes with magical plant juice. So they just melt together with magical plant juice. So I've heard about the melting before. I didn't remember the plant part. All right. Akana. Oh no, my drink. I missed. Shoot. Okay, well, that actually worked out. Okay. Akana, an Argentine anthropologist of Mapuche origin, who died in 1994, related that in Peru, above 4,500 meters, there is said to be a plant called cachuca, which turns stone to jelly, and which the jacalopita bird, jacalopita bird uses to make its nest. Okay, so anyways, I'm sorry, I got stuck. A plant with similar properties that grows at even higher altitudes is known, among other things, as punco punco. This may be Ephedra andina, which the Mapuche consider a medicinal plant. Researcher Maurice Cotterell, too, believes that pre-Inca and Inca stonemasons possessed the alchemical technology to soften and pour stone. That's the part I remember, the softening and the pouring. I forgot about all the awesome other part. We can do this today, but only in one direction, from soft to hard. We call it concrete. It seems that the Incas and their Tiahuanacos could take the process one step further from hard to soft again, using igneous rocks. Sorry. Okay, using igneous rocks. At first, this seems incomprehensible, but given the molecular structure of matter, it is simply a question of overcoming the covalent bonds that bond atoms together. We can do this to ice. We can do this to ice when we turn it to water. And when we do it again, we turn it into steam. This may explain how the pre-Incas and Tiahuanacos assembled massive stones with imperfect shapes with such perfect precision. Close examination of the rounded edges of the stone suggests that the stone material has been poured as though it were once contained within a sack or bag, which had long since rotted or disappeared. Or maybe just like a full-on wooden form, Or something to, maybe it's not even hot, like the plant mixed with, maybe it's not even a hot process. Who knows? That's so fascinating. Alchemy! Okay. My eyes get lost. Dang it. Among the ancient cultures of Egypt and South Central America, there were many rituals and practices that were alike, such as circumcision, astrology, and having annual agricultural fairs. A more significant similarity that is common to both cultural areas is the astronomical and directional orientation of edifices. In Maya culture, knowledge of the heavens developed long before AD 250. This knowledge was used in the planning and construction of complex pyramid structures. In the pre-Mayan Teotihuacan culture of Mexico, buildings are grouped along a north-south axis. And in Egypt, the Great Pyramids at Cheops, are just 4 minutes west of perfect northerly alignment and have other directional and mathematical relationship to the moon, the planets, and the stars. Burial in underground tombs is a practice common to Egypt, Peru, and Mexico. The rituals of burial in these cultures were also much the same. All three embalmed and mummified their dead. They also went to great extremes to seal tombs so that what was within would be preserved. Many archaeological developments existed in cultures on both sides of the Atlantic. One example is the using of gold filling in teeth, which was done in both Egypt and Peru. The greatest and most obvious technology similarity, however, was the construction of pyramids. Among the pyramids can be found striking similarities. On both sides of the Atlantic Ocean, there are step pyramids constructed of several mastaba-like structures. In both cultures, many of those step pyramids stand around 200 feet tall, and evidence indicates that they underwent several changes of plan throughout their construction. This is the pyramid of Kukulkan in Mexico. Okay, we found it. Kukulkan. The use of stones for building the pyramids is also common in both cultures. The stones themselves and the construction techniques used, not only in pyramids but other structures as well, exhibit very similar technology. The Egyptians and the Tiahuanaco culture of Peru were capable of building with stones weighing many tons. The precise placement of these stones is equally impressive. The Tiahuanacans fit their stones so precisely that a razor blade could not be slipped between them. In Egypt, the stones are so accurately joined that there is never more than 1/50th of an inch between blocks. When noting the relationship between Egypt, South and Central America, and Atlantis, it can be found that the legends of Egypt and South/Central America make reference to the origin of the culture. Peruvian legend says that civilizations originators came from the sea. The Egyptians indicate that their ancestors came from the island of Meroe. Ignatius Donnelly, who lists 626 references in his book, Atlantis, the Antediluvian World, compared the cultural similarities on both sides of the Atlantic states that both the ancient Egyptian and American Indian culture originated in Atlantis and spread east and west when Atlantis was destroyed. Ooh. Other legends refer to a geographical connection with this island. They say that there were long bridges of land which joined Africa and South/Central America to Atlantis. Today, there is some evidence that support the legends of the land bridges. In the area of the Azores Islands, 900 miles off the coast of Portugal, between the Gulf of Mexico and the Mediterranean Sea, deep sea surroundings indicate that a great ridge runs south of the Azores for a distance and then divides, sending one arm to the South American and the other to Africa. A deep sea core was taken from one place on the ridge and revealed exclusively freshwater diatoms, indicating that part of the ridge was once above sea level. I've looked at those too. I've looked at those ridges on Google Earth. They're pretty fascinating. In 1898, also near the Azores, a ship discovered particles of lava from the seafloor, 2 miles deep, which had solidified with the vitreous structure. Only when lava solidifies in open air does it assume a vitreous structure. This is eerily similar to what Edgar Cayce said in Readings, that the continent itself extended from South America to Africa. According to the ancient Egyptian temple records that came down to us via the writings of Plato, the ancient Atlanteans fought an aggressive war against the rulers of Atlantis some 9,000 years earlier and won. These ancient and powerful kings or rulers of Atlantis had formed a confederation by which they controlled Atlantis and other islands and colonies as well. They began a war from their homeland in the Atlantic Ocean and sent fighting troops to Europe and Asia. Against this attack, the men of Athens formed a coalition all over Greece to halt it. When this coalition met difficulties, their allies deserted them, and the Atlanteans stood and fought alone to defeat the Atlantean rulers. They stopped an invasion of their own country, as well as freeing Egypt and eventually every other country under the control of the rulers of Atlantis. Wow. Now, new generic, archaeological, and linguistic research has demonstrated that the supposed discredited diffusion theory may have been scientifically correct all along, even if not politically correct. This theory argues that fair-haired, light-eyed agriculturalists, having tamed the horse and invented the wheel, conquered most of Europe, much of the Middle East, and northern India thousands of years ago, at the dawn of civilization during the Holocene, bringing with them a family of languages known as Aryan, and are also known as Indo-European/Iranian, spoken from Ireland to India. The Aryan family of languages include modern English, German, French, Italian, Irish, Greek, Russian, and indeed all European languages apart from Finnish, Hungarian, and Basque. Ooh, right. And that's the other thing, is that these other sagas and stuff have to do a lot with Finnish people and the Hellenistic age. Okay, so my eyes are starting to get fuzzy. Let me see if I rub them, it gets better. Oh, because it's been long. How long until this chapter? Oh, we're there. All right. That didn't help. I'm going to rub a little more. Okay. Oh, and then there's this, actually, I think that might have made it worse. There is this really cool chart. Similarities of vocabulary indicating close relationships between select Indo-European, quote, in quotes, Aryan languages. So we've got English, German, Spanish, Greek, Latin, Sanskrit, father, vater, padre, potter, pater, pitar. One in English then is ein, uno, hen, unus, ecum. Fire is Feuer, fuego, pure, ignis, agnes. Field is feld, campo, agros, ager, aras. Sun is sone or son, sol, helios, sol, and surya. King is koeng. I'm sorry for all of you German speakers. I don't know. Ray, Basilius, Rex, and Raha. And God is Got, Dios, Theos, Deus, and Divas. So cool. I'll show it to you too. All right. Actually, I think that my eyes are starting to get a little clearer. All right. Where was I? French, Italian, Basque, blah, blah. Son of a gun. Okay, the Aryan family of languages includes modern English, German, French, Italian, Irish, Greek, Russian, and indeed all European languages apart from Finnish, Hungarian, and Basque, together with Iranian, Pashto, Hindi, Gujarati, Bengali, Sinhalese, and other northern or originally northern Indian languages. The kinship can still be seen in basic words like 1, 2, 3, amen, da, try, in Irish, un, deux, trois in French. Oh no. Unos, unas, duo, tres in Latin, eins, zwei, drei in German, ein, tver, trur in Icelandic, Odin, deva, tree in Russian, and a duo, tria in Greek. One day I was, dare I say it, one day I'm going to speak all those languages. Oh gosh. Okay. In the ancestor of the Indian branch of this language family, Sanskrit, it's Eka Deva Treya. The people who spoke that language swept into the plains of northern India around 4,000 years ago as chariot-riding conquerors, calling themselves Aryans. On the way they gave their name to Iran, derived from the root Arya or Aryan, the Indo-European branch of peoples who settled in that land. I mean, I kind of hate to say this. Let me put my finger where I am. But it's like, what was that show that got so popular? I even watched it. I ended up, after years, starting to watch it right at the end. Game of Thrones. Just like all of, media and entertainment. All these things right in front of our faces, weaving these stories, pulling at our hearts, the things that we're drawn to, right? But there's just so many synchronicities, even just with that Game of Thrones through this book. Anyways, I don't know what my point is. Oh, because we just got to Arya, and she was my favorite character, right? Okay, so Aryans, Arya, anyways, I'm sure that was an accident. All right. Iran was the ancient name of Persia, and the religion of pre-Islamic Iran was called Zoroastrianism. Thank God I've seen that word before. The name of, I said it. The name of their prophet, was Zarathustra. Zarathustra. The stargazer. Ooh. The kings of ancient Iran, or Iran, were very proud to call themselves Aryans, or Aryans. Their rock edicts indeed say so, including the famous Behistun inscription by the Persian king Darius I the Great, to proclaim his military victories. I am Aryan, the son of an Aryan. Okay, the word Aryan occurs time and again in the ancient Iranian scriptures, such as prayers to the divine elements. And so that's actually a word. Yashts, which are prayers to the divine elements, and the Vendidad, the law against evil. Ooh, Yashts and Vendidad. However, all the ancient Zoroastrian scriptures speak of an earlier homeland, the lost Aryan Vahe, or Vahahi. Vayahi. It's spelled Vaejahi. Or seedland of the Aryans. Okay? Seedlands of the Aryans. From this homeland, the Indo-Europeans, or Aryans, moved to Upper India, Russia, and the nations of Europe, such as Greece, Italy, Germany, France, Scandinavia, England, Scotland, and Ireland. Ooh. All right. Baal Ganjadal, Gangalder, Talik, Baal Gangalder Talik was the first popular leader of the Indian independence movement. In 1903, he wrote the book, The Arctic Home in the Vedas. Hey, I just bought that book. I was thinking about reading it next week. I haven't read it yet. Cool. All right. He wrote the book, The Arctic Home in the Vedas. In it, he argues that the Vedas could only have been comprised in the Arctics, and the Aryans brought them south after the onset of the Ice Age. Okay. last few paragraphs. Let's see how long it takes to get through these words. Okay, Sanskrit, Latin, Avestan are all sister languages. And the present day Upper Indian, Persian, and European languages are related. Examples, Baradar in Persian, Barta in Sanskrit, brother in English. Persia is actually a late European term for the language of Farsi. The Arabic phrase in Iran only began 1300 years ago. So then it has this map with like a whole breakdown of the Aryan language and the Baltic, Slavic, the Germanic, the Roman, the Celtic, Albanism, Greek, Armenian, and what does that say? Something Indo something, or Asian, Indo and Asian. But here's the map. What does it say? Indo LR Arishan. I don't know what that word says, but that's that whole breakdown. So interesting. And then last little tiny blip here for chapter 5. The cities of Mohenjo-Daro and Harappa, were built by the Aryans who migrated to India, bringing the Vedas with them. They flourished for thousands of years before succumbing to some other catastrophe or degradation of civilization. Dang, right? Yeah, I think I will call it here. It's been 2 hours and 23 minutes. Ooh, I just missed the 222. Wow, right? Sometimes it feels like, I don't know. It's just, it's like if you don't use it, you lose it. And sometimes it feels like some of these things I'm hearing today, they're just like, like foggy, distant memories or things that I heard for the first time. Thanks for being here with me. We're going to get through this again. I really don't know what I am going to read next. I don't know if I'm going to read that Home in the Vedas or not, but we'll get through Species with Amnesia. By the way, Robert Sepehr has a lot of other books that you can check out. Plus, he also suggests tons of good books. I probably got my best book list from Robert Sepehr just by watching his videos over the years and stuff. I'll be like, oh, gotta get that book. Oh, gotta get that book. Oh, Code, I'm so thankful to see you. Mwah. No worries, man. No worries. It's been fun. And man, I mean, if you're not busy, you should go back and listen. Like, it's some pretty interesting stuff. I feel that way though. I feel that way for anybody. So yeah, you know what? Oh, Mystical, I totally didn't see that you were here. Awesome. I will go through and do a shout out of everyone that I saw here. So we had Emily here, Emily Shane, Michael Stevens, Genevieve, Juice from the Sky, very first here. Voynich was here with us. We have Heidi here. We had Fiona here. Michael. Oh, Maddeep was here. Oh, yeah, that's right. I haven't seen you forever. And let's see here. Am I missing anybody? Singe came too. Trace was here. Mystical. Oh my gosh. I love yous. I love y'all. Thank you very much. Oh, Desert, welcome. Oh my gosh. So one more reading for Species with Amnesia, our forgotten history. Lots of, such good info. I will see you guys very soon. I'm going to finish it out this week. And I'll see you tomorrow on that stream with Genevieve and Code. We're doing the Trinity of Tarot on Thursday at 6:30 p.m. at Code's channel. We're going to be reading some tarot. So if you have some question, we have oracle cards at the ready. I love you. And mwah, I will see you a very, very soon. Thank you. Thank you. End.